you're banging the drum and you've got the pom-poms.
Wickham away, though.
Wickham away is a tough place to go.
Is it?
Hello and welcome to another episode of That Peter Crouch podcast with me, Peter Crouch, Chris Stark and Statman Dave with me as usual. You all right, boys?
Very good. Yes, you, Dave?
Yeah, new venue. Feels a bit strange.
New venue. I've been in this pub a few times. It's a decent away pub. Have you been here?
It is an away pub. I've been in here myself. It's pretty handy for the tube to a certain ground.
Yeah. We can say, can't we? It's like it's a very busy pub before games at Wembley because it's a couple of stops down, and I've been here a few times. And the last time I came here was for the FA Cup final, and there was so many Chelsea fans in this pub. And as I crossed the road over from Baker Street Station, I got pelted with celery. As did everyone crossing the road. I don't think it was targeted. It might have. We were getting absolutely pelted by celery. But nice to be in this pub, Dave. Slightly different location. Weirdly, though, we're in the corner and there's still flies buzzing around.
Feels like home. No bacon on the floor, though. That's something I'd kind of request for next time if they can sort that one out. You got the lout, Chris? Like it's all good.
It suggests that maybe the pub wasn't the issue with the flies and it's in fact us.
Well, I do worry that it's come out of one of our underpants or something.
Jesus. Can I propose another theory? Flies kind of like beer. They get attracted
but
to...
Are they? You don't often see them indoors, do you?
Normally when I'm out with mates, you don't get the flies around the table sort of thing. It seems to be a podcast only.
Have you lads worked in a pub before?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you not have it when you worked at a pub? Especially in London. I used to work in a pub in Chancery Lane and very much found that was the case.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, we're in this pub today, changed the location because, good news, guys, they're actually renovating the pub that we normally record in.
Really?
Which we're hoping will mean the toilets might improve ever so slightly.
Oh, but it kills the arms and shank deal, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, so they're going to be building new toilets at the pub that we normally record in. And then I thought what might be cute is we could do an opening ceremony or something like that.
That'd be nice.
Cut the ribbon.
And yeah, other news, lads, we've been delving into potentially getting a blue plaque on our pub.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know what the procedure is, but we're in talks.
That's really exciting.
Yeah, I drove past Bob Marley's house the other day. I thought that was amazing. He's got a blue plaque in Notting Hill.
Oh, really? Yeah.
You lived there.
It feels like a place of cultural significance, doesn't it? The pub that we record in, because we've done most of the episodes for this podcast in that pub. Seen some amazing moments.
Yeah, like it's an area of cultural significance.
I'm really excited about this podcast. I'm interested to know where it goes because a little while ago we spoke about what your mentality was like growing up before you became a professional footballer and your relationship with your dad and maybe how he pushed you or how he promoted you or inspired you. And I particularly like that story he gave about you not going to parties or sort of the way he encouraged you to not go to parties.
That worked for me and, it might work for others.
It's very empowering. Gives you ownership of your career, right? So if you're motivated to make that decision when you're not going on the piss, you're going to make another decision to maybe train a little bit more.
We're all, not all of us, but some of us here are fathers.
What are you going to say? Some of us here are elite. Oh, no, hold on, I'm the elite athlete.
No. Some of us here are fathers, and it's like, how would you go about sort of? It's a hard thing to bring up kids, and we all do it our own way. But that sort of worked for me, and that's something that I'll try and put into my kids. I think
you were talking about your daughter and swimming before we started recording the podcast.
Yeah.
Very motivating for a father.
It is. I can't believe how much I'm into this, I didn't realise there's this arena league now that you go and it's like a league table and you get promoted, you get relegated and, we're in a sort of Premier League. I say we, my daughter's in the Premier League of the swimming and it's the first time she did it last week and we went to Wickham away and it's a tough place to go and we dug in and we got a decent result.
It's incredible this, right? He mentioned... Okay, let's unpack this. So I wasn't aware that you were going to these swimming meets and it was so competitive. And you were telling us before about there's a guy who bangs the drum for the place that you're swimming for.
Yeah,
but you're
so-
not swimming. Like, this is all your daughter, but you're turning up competitive dad, Peter Crouch.
Yeah, everyone is though. You know, like you all wear sort of like team colours. He bangs the drum. We all come in as a big squad, and like obviously the kids are at the front, and then the parents at the back, and you eye up the opposition, and then you swim it out, and obviously you get points for a win and a loss, and then obviously there's a final league table at the bottom. It's my first time my daughter's ever done it, and I've got to say it's really. I mean, I think it was better than football on a Saturday almost. It was like you go there. And you know, I'm watching, you know, I'm invested in it, you know, because my daughter's involved, and you're like, it's so competitive, and you know, it's in an arena, so you're in a great leisure centre, and you're in a stand, and you're cheering them on, and you know, you get a result, you're cheering for other people's kids who are part of your team because it gets the points higher, and you don't want to be in the relegation zone fighting for your life. You know, you
Are
want
you missing football?
No. Really excited. Wait till Bango gets there.
Mate, my little girl does swimming, but I wasn't aware of she just does lessons. I wasn't.
Yeah, but she's
too
young.
aware of when it gets.
You know, she'll get to that point where you're banging the drum and you've got the pom poms.
Wickham away though.
Wickham away is a tough place to go.
Is it?
Tough place to go. Great swim squad. You know, full of highly tuned athletes. But we went there and we did get a result.
But you've played in some of the biggest stadiums in the world.
Wickham's
right?
hostile.
Is it?
Wickham Leisure Centre was hostile. I noticed it was a good facilities as
Is
well.
it like being in Turkey? Or something? What's it comparable to?
Besiktas away.
Oh, Wickham. Wickham away. A friend of mine, who's swimmer Tom Dean, you were saying you met him at that as well, but you didn't have a clue who he was at first. I think that's okay to say.
I'm quite new to this, you know, and I should know more about swimming. You know, like obviously now my daughter's, you know, really enjoying it and she's competing. So obviously I'm trying to do my homework, but I admit I didn't recognise him. And then, you know,
but when Tom Dean came up to you, I mean, this is a, you know, gold medalist, like one of our
Olympian.
Yeah, like unbelievable athlete. Were you concerned it was like one of the Wickham lot or something coming over? Did you
no, I think
lob celery at him or something?
You could tell a swimmer a mile off. Like I knew he was a swimmer, but then obviously he said, you know, we were chatting away and he talked about the Olympics, and I said, "Oh, how'd you get on?" And he was like, "Yeah, I won it twice." I was like, "Oh, you know, sorry, that was poor for me." But I'm just not across the swimming much.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, then I've obviously delved into his career and had a look at like amazing. I like, because I see it with my little girl now, obviously up before school, and it's hard work. But he's training 3 times a day in quite a solitary environment. And we talk, you know, this podcast about mentality. That mentality to achieve an Olympic gold medal in a sport, which is completely like, I was training with my mates every day. We're having a laugh, and you know, we get through it, and it's quite sociable. Like, to be a swimmer, that takes serious dedication. Like those boys and you know,
Well, I
girls
don't
as well.
think there's red arse in that sport.
That's
Is
what I
there,
mean.
you
Where's
know?
the red arse?
Yeah,
What'd you
to
do?
bring in, I think.
What'd you do? Flick the speedos at the end?
Yeah, or like, you know, the floats. You just get it wrapped around your
the
arse.
floats
like,
around your
yeah.
arse. Yeah, it might be. Just flick the end of the bell. Everyone gets a free flick.
If you catch it right, it's agony.
Nothing
but
worse than that.
Or it's nothing.
Crikey, like whoa.
It's all or nothing.
It's all or
isn't it?
nothing. Imagine if you got to catch it right, you can't go straight in.
Yeah.
Like we used to do it on the ears. Like we have 2-touch. Usually in a hotel before a game, we'd have a big room where the massage table was, and we'd have a game of 2-touch. You'd have 3 lives or 2 lives, and you'd always flick. Like, but when I say flick, no holds barred flicks, we used to draw blood. We drew blood a few times. You'd go to bed, I swear to you, ear flicks, blood drawn. Ridiculous.
Let's not let you near anyone's bell end then.
Just warning you.
Imagine you were in swimming. Just imagine for a second Crouchy never did what he did in football, but did it in swimming.
Would be
and
good.
This is what he brought to the game. All of them, Tom Dean and the rest of them lined up, and he's there just flicking their bell ends.
Don't tell me it's not happening.
Or, you know, where they're on the
Don't tell me.
podiums and they're doing the anthem, stood there in the middle, and Crouchy just leans to his right and just flicks his bell end. Crouchy.
You'd be
Can you imagine it?
surprised,
Just
mate.
there flicking Tom Dean's belly like that.
It's out there, I'm telling you. I reckon it happens.
Right, should we get into what this episode is all about? And it's all of your questions that you've been sending in for Crouchy all around this topic of the mentality in becoming a footballer to Crouchy standard. We got so many messages in Crouchy. There's quite a few to go through here. We might not get through all of them today. We could do this again. Should we kick it off? Message from Robbie. I'm an 18-year-old player in Northern Ireland and my dream is to play in Spain or Portugal. I play for the reserves and aiming for the first team at an Irish League club. I am a smaller, more technical player, which can be difficult at times due to the brand of football being direct and physical. I'm fully dedicated to my football. I eat right, hit the gym, don't go to parties, and if I do, I leave early. Many players my age have gone across to England or Scotland to sign pro contracts. I have been dedicated for so long, but I've not seen many rewards in terms of contracts, so it's difficult to keep the motivation. What's your advice?
Oh, it's a nice message. It's difficult to then, I didn't know where I would be, what I would do. I think, trying to pick a place to play is hard. Like I would have played anywhere. They would have allowed me, to a certain level. I went to Sweden. Did I see myself playing in Sweden forever? No, but if someone had taken me in the top division, would I have gone there? Maybe. I think it's very, very hard to then go, I'm suited to this league, unless you could go and move over there, and start out for a team and hope you get spotted there if that's your goal.
But is there a grass is always greener situation in maybe the perception that a league which is notoriously suited to a certain type of footballer, it's individual examples of it rather than a total solution?
I would agree with that. I've played in Portugal, and that is a rough league. Like I've played Guimarães. I remember playing for Portsmouth, and they were the most physical team I've ever played against, probably.
I think it's an interesting one. Obviously, Spain and Portugal are seen as the technical leagues, but I want to throw a new league to Robbie, Liga or French football. Statistically, last season across Europe's top 5 leagues in France, per game, you had the most completed short passes. I'm thinking that might suit Robbie, and he could be the next Branco van der Boomen. You've heard of Branco?
Oh, yeah.
Toulouse, attacking midfielder, played in Ligue 2 last season, got a lot of great midfield stats, as we can see, Crouchy. Does a lot of things really well. Go Branco.
So he's broke this down for me here.
It's just another level, isn't it? Sorry, it blows me away.
Have you just been... You've just been Brancoing for
I've been looking at Branco for a while, actually. His statistics jumped out in Ligue 2, and they have translated to Europe's top 5 leagues in Liga. Assist, he's in the top 1% of players. Shots on target, through ball, switches. I'm thinking Robbie could adapt his game.
I think there's a couple of things to pick up in his message as well. This seems like an option that he might not have considered, judging by his message. So I think it's a good shout. But 2 questions for you from this, Crouchy. Do you think it's better to be physically different, because it seems to be something that's on his mind, in a league where other people are, taller or like, and maybe vice versa, to be a point of difference, and you just craft your game the best you can to be in that situation?
I think as an 18-year-old, people are knowledgeable about football. Like people that are watching football that are trying to pick you up at pro clubs or take you on to the next stage in your career are knowledgeable about the game. And I think if you are he's smaller but more technical, like if he's different to someone else, as I was different to a lot of people, that actually makes you stand out more. If you're in a league full of big people and you're technical and you'll be able to cope with that, and you're showing your technical abilities in a league that's not suited to you, that will elevate you higher to potentially going in a league full of technical players where you wouldn't stand out. So what I would say, and my advice would be, is he's in Northern Ireland and it might be a physical league, but if he can stand out in that league amongst physical players, that will put him, it will become more noticeable. But stick with it, Robbie.
Yeah. He's trying to break into the first team as well. Should he be a bit more Parchy, perhaps?
Potentially parched, yeah.
Maybe
Yeah,
parch. Give a little parch and just see how it goes down. Maybe
Yeah,
no
definitely.
harm done.
Odegaard's obviously a great example of being the parched or El Parcho. Just get on that.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, should we do another message? Message from Henry. Should we do this one? Is there a point when you just click and realise you're going to make it as a pro, or does it just surprise you?
I always felt personally that I had ability, but I didn't know where that would lead me. You know, Owens, Rooney's, players like that, you just know are going to be world-class players. You know, for me, it wasn't like that. And for many players, it's not like that. I didn't know whether I'd have it got to a stage where I was sort of 18, 19, where I knew I was going to have a career, but I didn't know at what level. I really, really didn't know. And I remember those first time at QPR, it was so like cutthroat. It was whether you would make it or not. And I got a couple of injuries and I got in and the crowd weren't sure about me. And I'll always remember it to this day against Gillingham when the ball sort of like chested it down and I slipped and I heard the crowd groan. And I thought if I'd have fell over and put it over the bar, would I be here today? You know, but I sweeped it home with it on the volley. And my confidence just grew from there. And then I thought, that was the moment I thought, I'm going to have a career in football. I knew I'd have a career then. And just from one sort of moment. And after that, obviously, I exceeded my wildest dreams with my career. But at that moment, I thought, yeah, I'm going to have a career out of football. And that was all I wanted. You know, everything that's come to me now has been a surprise. Not a surprise because I've worked hard to get there and I always felt that I had the ability to get there. But if you'd have said to me as a 15-year-old that I'd have the career that I've had, I would have thought you were mad.
Chris, did you have a moment like that? You dropped one banger and then it changed your DJing career?
No, look, jokes aside, I think there's this film, isn't there, The Pursuit of Happiness, where Will Smith gets the job, or, you know, Will Smith, the character, like gets this job and then he walks outside and onto the street and it all goes slow-mo and he's buzzing, like, and everyone's just walking around and he's finally got this job he wanted. Like, it's such an amazing moment to have, I think, if you're lucky enough to have it. And it can happen, I think, in any job or any form of achievement, whether it's having a baby or like something you've worked hard for or something you accomplish. But yeah, my job, I felt very lucky to have that. Scott took me to a pub and he was like, I'm not going to tell you this, but Radio 1 are going to offer you a year's contract tomorrow. Because up to then, I'd only be doing like 1 or 2 days a week. And I was so fucking happy because this was, in my world, this was like everything I'd aimed to do and everything I'd done, hospital radio and student, and done everything for free and work experience. And I got this 1 year contract and suddenly I felt secure. And then suddenly the job prospect element of it suddenly felt like it is going to happen. And I remember just having this pint in front of me and downing it. And I've never had elation like that apart from when my kids were born. It's so different. And look, this is about being a footballer, and that's what.
No, but I don't think it's different. I don't think it is different. That's the point. Like when we did Ed Sheeran last week, you know, he talks about when he took, he did a gig with just a sound guy. No one turned up. The same with you. Like you're doing hospital radio. There must have been knockback after knockback after knockback. What makes you keep going? That's the difference. What we're getting to the bottom of with mentality. Like what made him continue? You know, I had so many knockbacks and problems and people told me I wasn't good enough or I didn't look right or, you know, there was constant problems. You must have encountered that as well.
I cried one night. I always remember this. I remember being at my mum and dad's house and I was in bed and I was just thinking, like, there's one thing I really want to do. I was so frustrated because I was answering, that was it. I was actually working at Radio 1 by then. I'd managed to get a job answering the phones on the Sunday surgery. So I was literally just taking calls, like, but I knew I was just so annoyed because I was like, I felt like I had a foot in the door, but I just wasn't leading anywhere. And I loved doing that, don't get me wrong. And I loved doing the internships and works. But I remember being at home one night and just crying because I was like, I've got to get a proper, like all my mates were getting jobs and I felt I was being maybe like, it was my ego or something was taken over in that I should be looking after my family and my sister had just had a baby and I should do more to support her. And weirdly enough, I then got the call to go in and do what I call a pilot, like a little demo kind of thing. About a week after, I remember being upset and being honest, like just couldn't sleep and everything escalates at night as well. Must be so many people want to get into football, right, who are fucking good footballers and lie there at night. And I don't know if you boys are the same. Like everything at night gets heightened. Like my brain goes into overdrive, and maybe because it's quiet and you're lying there, and things can feel really like can make you feel a bit sick almost.
But this is to put like what I'm saying, like what makes you keep going? You know, even when when that happens, like not everyone does, do they? And not everyone should either.
No.
But there is something I don't know that you think. I think it's just the love of what you do. You know,
don't you think that informed every decision you did, which eventually led to something? Like the thing is, when I look back at every little thing I did kind of like I did push through that feeling. Maybe I don't know, but there was obviously a huge amount of luck, and I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't force yourself through those situations, and it's not a nice place to feel, but I think the common thread is, even if it doesn't work out, the ones where it does work out, you still have to go through that phase. That's the common thing that bonds people, is there is a point where you're upset and you think it's not going to work out. The most important thing about that whole process probably is that you continue to love it regardless. And if it doesn't work out in terms of professional footballer, use what you learn in that situation, apply it to something that you love, and then have both. Maybe.
Yeah, well, everything I did in my football career was always governed about me playing.
Yeah.
So like I remember I was at Tottenham, and Jerry Francis sort of like tricked me really. I was so naive. He said, look, we'll sign you. They were signing me from 60 grand from Tottenham, and I hadn't played any first team football. But he said, you know, I'm not saying we'll definitely offer you first team football, but you'll be in and around the first team. So I was like, right. And I was so nervous and I was buzzing. So I went to see Jerry and said, look, I had an agent at the time. I had an agent from when I was 14. Ledley King introduced me to him when I was when I was an associate schoolboy, and he won me over by giving me a pair of free Preds. And wow. And I'm still with him to this day, to be fair.
He's played a blinder.
And then that was that. And Jerry said to me, "Oh well, I don't deal with agents." Well, obviously he deals with agents every single day of his life, right? But he played me and my dad, and I was like, "Look, I'm new to this." He said, "No, if you bring your agent, that deal's off." So I was like, "Oh my God!" So went in there, and he had me over a barrel with my first contract, but it wasn't motivated by money. You know, I was there to play football. So obviously I come, my agent was ringing me. I was dealing with Jerry this morning, you idiots. You know, he's only doing that so he can undercut you. But I'd already signed the contract.
You didn't tell your agent until after the contract?
No, I went there with my dad and we signed a contract that was probably, you know, miles lower than it should be. But I was playing football. I was not guaranteed, but I was in a chance to progress my career. And if I hadn't taken that opportunity, well, you know, I'd been on a few more quid a week, but would I have had the opportunity to be where I am now?
There's a similar message from Mellissa. It says, was there a point you thought you'd never make it? And if so, what job would you have done instead? I think linked to that and the question before, did you ever hit a point where you were going to throw football away?
There were some real lows, but no, never. Not for 1 second did I ever think that I would give up. And it wasn't even about giving up. It was just I was always going to play, and I wanted to play at the highest level I could possibly be. And I always felt I had ability to be there. But I remember like Des Bolpin was the youth team manager at Tottenham, and he just believed in me like ridiculously to the point where it was like and he would drag me in as a schoolboy to train with the scholars on the holidays. So they were 16 and I was 15 still at school, and I was the only one from the year below playing with these kids. And obviously, man, how nerve-wracking it is for a 15-year-old to go into like these boys are training every single day. They've got a rapport. They've got like a group, a clique, and it's different like to how it is now. You know, it was harsh. You know, so imagine being the skinny, like lanky kid from school coming in to train with these older lads. Like I found it so tough. Like, and obviously I was the manager's son. That's what they used to call me. You know, it was like parched basically. Young Parchio. And yeah, that was tough. I mean, I found it really hard going in every day. And there were times where I was like, I don't want to go in. You know, in the morning, you think I don't want to go. You know, they're going to take the mick out of me. But I got through it every single day, and because I loved it. And that led to then be, hold on a minute, you can play. And then I got into that team. And then, you know, I sort of overcome it. And then overcoming those fears, like, became a pattern of my life. You know, like, overcoming those problems, I realized how good it feels when you have something that you want to give up on, that you don't give up on, that you come out the other side of, is the most rewarding thing you can possibly do in life. It's like, you know, when someone puts a barrier up and, you know, and you don't want to do it so much, but you do, and you come out of it the other side, it's the best feeling in the world. And I still have that to this day. You know, even now, you know, we go on at Crouch Fest, for instance, you know, we'll go, the last time, do you remember last time? Do you remember me at Crouch Fest last time? Dave, I was so out of my comfort zone. I'm sitting there and I'm going, whoa, and I walked into this arena. I'm going, what are we doing?
I remember me and you looking at each other. Everyone, well, we had a beer before, didn't we? And we were just trying to do anything because everything. I found it. I'll be honest. I found it mental in that situation because you play in front of 50, 60, 70, like 1,000 people, and I'm thinking like, okay, it was a big crowd. Don't get me wrong, but it was 3,000 people. But I remember us going in and there was just this wall of noise and everyone was so rowdy. You can love it, Dave. Everyone was so supportive and we'd done these walk-ons, ridiculous walk-ons. I remember you just turning to me and being like, how do we start? What do we do?
Even that live TV stuff, you know, like obviously doing live TV now, for instance, like the football's okay because I feel like, you know, I've got a grasp on that. I know what I'm doing. But things like I did the Euro show on the BBC and like, you know, all of a sudden they go, right, you're live to like millions of people and like that buzz of, I'm thinking, what am I doing here? I shouldn't be here. But then overcoming that and it being a success is the best feeling ever.
I was reading a book from Anne Middleton that talks about fear as a bubble. And you're talking about fear in that one moment being a bubble. But when you overcome it, it becomes addictive.
Yeah.
And it's something about self-belief that you need to be able to put yourself in these uncomfortable moments because it makes you better and you don't want to do it. But when you do it, like you say, and you're starting to break things down, you're starting to really become yourself. And I think that's something for anyone like, you know, let's say Robbie, doing these hard things, getting through it, you'll feel such confidence in yourself. And I think that's something that's been coming through, Crouchy, is that you basically snowballed this and you were so confident.
Well, like you say about, like, it's not just, it's sort of in any walk of life now, Dave. I'm like, things that you overcome, just, you know, no matter what it is, there's people, you know, who have jobs now that might have to lead a meeting in, you know, a board meeting, or they might have to try and win a campaign or win a, you know, even job interviews. You know, like, it's so easy to just go, oh, forget that. Like, I'm nervous. I'm too nervous. I'm not going to do it. But then you put yourself in that position. It's horrible thing to do. But then you sort of come through it and you nail it and you think, oh my God.
Or you fuck up. It's okay. It's okay to fuck up. Like, this was the biggest thing I learned a while ago, was I fucked up something once. I remember being really hungover and there was filming something. It was a big weekend. We're in this porta cabin, so there's cameras all around. And it's live, like on TV or iPlayer or something like that. And I had to do a link, and I just remember it feeling all of a sudden really hot. I don't know if I was having like a panic attack or something. I don't know if it was something like that. I just remember feeling really hot and I couldn't fucking talk. And I remember seeing my boss had just come in with like this MP to kind of go on, this is our brilliant Radio 1 cabin, a film studio, big week festival going on behind. And I'm sat there and I remember being quite new and I butchered this link. And by butchered, I was like, after it happened, I wanted to be sick. I couldn't talk. I was like this. I was like, Avicii, Ibiza pills, took a pill. I laugh about it now, right? But I remember going out and like, I remember just going like, I'm losing my job here. Like, I'm losing my job. And I learned actually, and it took so long to get there, that actually you can fuck things up. And as long as you sort of like acknowledge it's okay to fuck things up, it weirdly makes you then better. Like, I only got better at my job when I'd made a mistake. Got a message from Chris here. Cheers for your message, Chris. How did you cope with injuries as a youngster? Have you experienced any pressure to return when not match fit, or pressure to play injured? I've got to admit, I think if I was a manager, I would have a zero injury policy. as in I don't believe in injuries.
Okay.
It frustrates the hell out of me with
Yes,
the current
really
Watford team, out every Saturday, 4 or 5 out with injury. And I think it's a pathetic excuse.
There's an element of it that being a bit harsh, but coming from a man who wasn't injured much, there is definitely an element of truth in it being pathetic.
Is it a mentality thing?
No, I don't know. Listen, there's injuries that you can't get up from, but there's also injuries where I think you could probably get through that. I mean, it was labelled at Daniel Sturridge for a while, and I've played with players that played with Daniel Sturridge, and you think, and there's certain players that I played with that you thought you could probably get through it, but they were a little bit scared to make it worse, so they don't take the option to go through it. And I think there were some players with that kind of mentality that if I play today, I may make it worse. So they don't, like that mentality I don't get. I really don't get. I think if you can get out there were times where I thought, I remember having injections in my ankle I was away at Newcastle and I couldn't get my boot on because I didn't have any feeling in it. And because I'd numbed the pain. But then my boot, it was swollen, but it didn't feel like my own foot, you know what I mean? But I'm not sitting here saying I was a hero, far from it. But I don't know, would someone else have missed that game? Or I don't know, I would have done anything to be on that pitch at any given time for selfish reasons. I wanted to, of course I wanted to help my team, but I wanted to be out there. I didn't want to lose my starting place. I didn't want to give up a chance to score goals. I didn't want to... I didn't want someone taking my place, and I would have got out there, no matter what. And sometimes that's actually a more selfish way of looking at things. You think, is that to the detriment of the team? I'm injured and I'm playing, but I would have done anything to be on that pitch, and that's not always the mentality with every player.
Let's talk about your injuries again. You mentioned you didn't pick up many injuries. I scoured the internet and I think I found 6 in an entire career. Is so impressive. The big one as well was appendicitis.
Yeah, well, I had a few issues. I had a hernia operation, and this was actually with the birth of my little boy. And I had it a couple of weeks before I was due to give birth, and Ab was like, "You sure you'll be all right?" And I was like, "No, hernia. You done in 5 days." My hernia got infected, so I had the mesh put in, and I got infected. And when Jack was being born, baby Divrat. I was lying in hospital next to Ab, and she always swears, but she's like the nurses were coming in going, "Do you want a cup of tea, Pete?" And this and that. Ab's just giving birth, and I'm lying next to her with a dodgy groin.
Absolutely,
and, I was in bits though, I had a fever. I was so ill. I can't believe infection had spread through. I've got pictures of it, which you won't want to see. But my groin had gone black, and you could see all the. And they said they measured the infection, and it was on a ridiculous scale. And I was sweating, and the fever. It was horrific. And then Ab went home with the baby, and I was still in.
Yeah, but you're getting cups of tea every 5 minutes. What's your problem?
True. Quite enjoying it.
But an actual injury that you had at Stoke, I think was one of the biggest. 27 days out. I think you missed around 6 games with an ankle injury. Looking back on that season, you were in and out of the side. For the players that have obviously sent questions in, how do you adjust your mentality in those seasons?
You'd have to speak to people who had broke their legs, and I was so lucky. Touch wood, even now that never happened to me, or did the cruciates or were out for a long space of time. But that 6 weeks I remember clear as day, because I hated every single minute of it. You come in at a different time, you don't see the lads. You have to stay around the training ground and do things that were just monotonous to get your strength back up. Sitting on the couch and watching games on a Saturday was repulsive to me. I found it so hard to deal with. And how you have a long-term injury, the mentality. I remember speaking to Jamie Redknapp. We used to travel down to Southampton together, and he's had his injury issues, and the sort of mentality you have to have, and then the work rate to get back to playing again is so hard. I remember Ledley King's one of my best friends. When we grew up together, and watching him sort of, we'd all go out to training, and you'd see him and he'd just be on this arm bike, because, and you'd think, and he'd be the best player on a Saturday, but just that mentality of watching everyone else going out to have fun, and you're like, it's like the dog, you know, at the Battersea Dogs Home that doesn't get picked. You know, all the other dogs go out and have a massive walk in Battersea Park. And you're just sitting there whimpering, crying, looking at the window going, oh, I wish I was out there.
Got a message here from Josh, the young farmer. Big up, Josh. I see a few messages from this fella.
That says, like, Josh, like the young farmer, like, is that how he goes by?
No. You know about young farmers, do you? I DJ for a lot of young farmers. There's a scene.
Was this what a young farming?
I need to explain all this now.
Young farming scene.
Yeah. You never heard of a young farmer?
Well, I imagine they're farmers that are young.
No,
but
it's not
it's
like
a scene.
All over the UK. There's thousands of what are called young farmers. There's young farmers organisations. I get booked to DJ a lot of their events. So I'll turn up and it'll be like a cow shed and there'll be 1,000 young farmers like drinking, shirts above their head. Like it's...
You know about this, Dave?
This sounds absolutely wild. I think we need to go down.
The rave scene of the 90s.
I think you really need to be across this, because a lot of these young farmers, they work in isolation, spend a lot of hours in tractors or working by themselves in farms. So we keep them company with this podcast. I think you'd be surprised how many young farmers listen to this podcast. But Josh here calls himself Josh the Young Farmer, and hence why we're having this discussion. But it's a real thing.
Right.
All over the UK.
I'll look out for that. Young farmers, get in touch.
Yeah. Well, definitely. I'll bring you along to a young farmers gig. Come along to one of my gigs there. They're brilliant.
Sounds
Great
good.
party. Right. Josh has got a question. What person was most influential in your youth days and helped your mindset of becoming a pro footballer?
Well, yeah, bar none, my dad. You know, obviously he was the biggest influence on me wanting to watch football, wanting to play football, and then supporting me through my football journey, without doubt him. But then there's people along the way, you know, like my first school teacher, Mr. Waring, had a massive influence. My first football manager at West Middlesex Colts, Andy Campbell. Now, these are names that just, you know, might not mean anything to other people, but, you know, just was so big on my career. I mean, Andy, you know, these people give up their time to volunteer to manage these kids' football teams, and you know they can't be underestimated. They are every player that you see in the Premier League now has an Andy Campbell or has a Mr. Waring or has you know not necessarily their dad, but someone of that caliber that they related to. It might be a school teacher, and then I go on to my secondary school where Ted Dale was there, and he was the manager of my county team. You know, my district team was, he was involved in that as well, and my school teacher, and he actually had ties in with Chelsea. But then I had Bob Osborne, was another person who was at Chelsea actually, who got me to be a ball boy. And then later on I had Bob Arbour, Pat Holland and Des Bulpin at Tottenham, who then just believed in me. And these are all names you probably wouldn't know, but people that were hugely, hugely influential on my career. And I wouldn't be where I am without that group of managers and coaches and teachers, and of course my dad. And certainly for me, like Bob Osborne was trying to get me down to Chelsea, and I was at QPR at the time. We used to train at Barclays Bank, and he tried to drag me down to Battersea to train with Chelsea. And I don't know, it just didn't feel right. Like at that time, they were just getting in lots and lots of players, and the turnover of players was. My dad felt they weren't developing players at that time. You know, under Neil Bath now, they have an amazing structure at Chelsea, and I think Neil Bath is another one actually. He used to do the sports development in the Ealing area, and we used to go and do summer camps, and he was someone who was amazing to be around. But like he's elevated himself to now he's like in charge of the whole academy at Chelsea. So I've watched like his journey as I suppose he's watched mine, and he's another one, hugely influential. Has so much knowledge about the game. Barry Quinn, another one. I think I've touched on him at Brentford. He was, someone who just developed me as a player. With the ball at my feet, came up with so many drills that really honed my sort of technique as a player, and that stood me in good stead right the way through. There's so many people that I want to mention, and I will have forgotten some that that will disappoint me probably tomorrow. But there's so many people along the journey that help you on your way to becoming the player you are, and you probably don't get the chance to thank them enough. So thank you.
What an episode that was, chaps. We've learned so much about mentality. Chris from your Radio 1 fuck up, Crouchy from loads of interesting football
Dave,
stuff.
Hold on a minute. I know what you mean though, Dave. And it is a bit different. This episode is a bit different, but I think it's always what this podcast has stood for. And I think it's good to have these conversations as well. We enjoy having them.
Yeah, it's good to talk about the mentality. It's like it's interesting, and lots of people are interested in it because certain parents and stuff like that. I want to see, if their kids have got like a talent, like how do you nurture that through, or and also the tough times, like people are going through them, like how do you overcome them, and sort of how did I overcome them, I suppose, and hopefully we've given that across.
Yeah,
and also
maybe it's a bit helpful. I don't know.
And also we've mentioned, about flicking balls.
We have, yeah. I think we've ruined swimming now as well. So that's, it's balance.
Light and shade.